In this video, we are going to discuss regarding midbrain. Midbrain. It is the uppermost of the brainstem, part of uppermost and shortest part of brainstem. And it has a cavity called cerebral aqueduct or aqueduct of Slibus. When we look external feature of this external feature, detail of external feature, features divided into perspective. One is anterior or ventral surface. Another is the dorsal surface. When we look anterior or ventral surface, there is cross cerebri, two cross cerebri, and in between there is a fossa, interpeduncle fossa. This is known as interpeduncle fossa. This fossa, and there is in the superior border of the interpeduncle fossa there is a mammillary body, and there is tuberous cinereum. So when we look in this image, in the anteriorly or superior there is an optic nerve and forming optic chiasma, and this is optic tract and forming optic chiasma and continuation of the optic nerve. So when we look anteriorly in the midbrain, there is from the anterior side there is a coming out of our nerve. This is called oculomotor nerve. Third nerve, oculomotor nerve. And there posteriorly there is trochlear nerve. When we discuss regarding the posterior, so in the ventral side we look cross cerebri, then interpeduncle, peduncular fossa with posterior perforating substance or perforated substance. We can look in this image. In this interpeduncle fossa there is some dotted material. This is known as posterior perforating substance. Moving on, dorsal surface. In the dorsal surface there is superior and inferior colliculi. Superior and inferior colliculi. This is in whole. It is in two in superior and two in inferior. So it is all are in 4 numbers. So it is also known as corpora quadrigemina. Corpora quadrigemina. So we're going to look in this image. This one is superior, and this is superior colliculus, this is superior colliculus, and this is inferior colliculus. And we can draw in the image in the posterior side. There is 4 in number. These 2 are superior and those 2 are inferior. And when we discuss regarding functionally, superior is associated with the vision or optic, but the inferior is with the auditory. Here we discuss more in the further. And there is also superior and inferior brachia. And we can look, yes, there is superior colliculus, inferior colliculus, then there is inferior brachia, and there is superior brachium. This is regarding the external feature. Now moving on the internal feature. When we look in the internally or cord section, we found tectum, internal structure, internal structures. We found 3 main portion. These are tectum, then tegmentum, then there is cross cerebri, or cerebral, and these tegmentum and the cross cerebri combined and known as cerebral peduncles. When we draw the image or look in this image, I think better to draw. This is a rough diagram of the midbrain. So in the between there is cerebral aqueduct. In the posteriorly there is if we cut the section at the inferior colliculus. So TS of inferior colliculus. So we look, there is 2 nuclei of inferior colliculus. Nucleus of inferior colliculus, and at the nearby this there is a central gray matter. Then there is nucleus for the, here is nucleus of trochlear. Then when you look anteriorly, there is a fiber or gray matter for the fibers of superior peduncles. These fibers are for these are the fibers of superior cerebral peduncles. We already discussed regarding this in the previous video. Like this is from the midbrain, there is passing some fibers through the cerebellum and connecting between them. This cerebral superior cerebral peduncle, and this there are the fibers. Now moving on, this cross cerebrally. In the cross cerebrally, in between them, this is a fossa. This fossa is known as interpeduncle fossa. Interpeduncle fossa, peduncular fossa, and in this region, in between the these fibers and this cross cerebri, there is some nuclei. This nuclei is known as Sostenia nigra. And moving on this portion, cross cerebri, there is some motor pathways going down, descending in this region. These are like corticospinal fibers, corticoreticular fibers, corticonuclear fibers in these, and there is also pontopontine fibers. We can look in this image also for at the base, at the inferior. So these nucleus are inferior colliculus. Then there is the nucleus for these are the nucleus for trochlear nerve. So that there is the arising of a trochlear nerve and passing through the posterior and at the inferior colliculus level. And this is the opening is the cerebral aqueduct and this contains several spinal fluid. And when we look, there is a gray matter, central gray matter, and there in the central gray matter, and here is a fiber dissection of the superior cerebral peduncles, and this region is known as Sostenia nigra, and there is the gray matter, and here is the ascending fibers are in this region, and here is the spinal lemniscus. This is spinal lemniscus, and spinal lemniscus. There is the medial lemniscus, spinal lemniscus, and lateral lemniscus. Medial lemniscus is formed by the ascending tracts. So at the level of this, and when we look at the cross cerebri, there is pontopontine fibers in the anterior and medial. But after that, in the lateral, in between lateral and medial, there is a corticospinal and corticonuclear fibers in this region, and in the lateral and posteriorly, there is a temporopontine fibers. This is transverse section. Moving on, more discussion in this tectum and internal structure. There is two cerebral peduncles, we have discussed peduncles. Moving on, this cross cerebri. In the cross cerebri, this is known as basis pedunculi, and these contain like fibers containing descending fibers of like corticospinal fibers. We have discussed corticonuclear fibers, and in the two sort of middle and the pontopontine and the temporopontine, peritopontine, or ossitopontine, these are fibers in this region we found. After that, tectum. In the tectum, this contain corpora, quadrigemina, and their brachium. brachium. There is in the corpora quadrant we have discussed superior colliculi, inferior colliculi, and superior colliculi, and their brachium, superior brachium, brachia, then inferior colliculi and their inferior brachium, brachia. Moving on, Sustainia nigra. So this is the Sustainia nigra, and regarding Sustainia nigra, it's separate the cross cerebri from the tegmentum. Like it separates the cross cerebri from the tegmentum. Substantia nigra. Regarding this, it separates cross cerebri and from the tegmentum, then it's divided into two parts. These two are two parts. These are the dorsal pars compacta, then another one is the ventral pars compacta, and it is made of the deeply pigmented cell, made of deeply pigmented cells containing melanin and iron. Also, its function is concerned with muscle tone. And when we look this central cerebral aqueduct of the sylvius or the periductal or the gray center mass, this separates tegmentum. This is the tegmentum portion. This is tegmentum portion. This is tegmentum portion. So it separates by this. Moving on, cranial nuclei in the midbrain. So there is two cranial nuclei we have discussed, like cranial nuclei of cranial nerve and their nuclei. In this region there is two nerve. One is oculomotor nerve. Another one is trochlear nerve. So this is the third cranial nerve, and this is fourth cranial nerve. Third and fourth originated from the midbrain. Now moving on the oculomotor. In the oculomotor there is it has two nuclei. There is oculomotor nucleus, nucleus, and another one is Edinger Westphal nucleus. When we look at this Edinger Westphal nucleus, this has accessory oculomotor fibers and parasympathetic fiber for the eye. Parasympathetic fibers for eye. Fibers to the eye. Right. Moving trochlear, it's a trochlear nuclei only. Trochlear nuclei. We can see in this image. Here is nucleus for the oculomotor nerve, and in this image we can look. There is a nucleus for trochlear. This is for trochlear. This is for oculometer. Oculometer nerve passes through the anteriorly or ventral, but regarding the trochlear nerve, this nerve fiber passes posteriorly, passes posteriorly and or dorsally, and these crosses each other and go lateral to the midbrain and go anteriorly. This is the path. This is the course. Moving on this image, what we have discussed. So this is at the level of inferior colliculus. Transverse section of at the level of transverse section of inferior colliculus, level of inferior colliculus of midbrain. So we can look in the transversely. There is a nucleus for the oculometer, and there is the nerve fiber passes medially posteriorly to the this interpeduncle fossa and passes out, and medial to the this cross cerebri. Moving on, this is the nucleus we have already discussed, and these are the reticular formation. These are the reticular formation. This nucleus is a red nucleus at the level of inferior colliculi, and this nucleus is lemnisci. There is lateral lemnisci. There is lemnisci system like spinal lemnisci, trigeminal. This is the medial lemnisci, and there is also lateral lemnisci. And when you look, this is at the level of superior. This is the level of inferior, and this is the level of superior. This is the level of superior colliculus. So this we have discussed superior colliculus. Now moving on the inferior colliculus. In the inferior colliculus level, there is the trigeminal nerve or trochlear nerve, and this trochlear nerve passes posteriorly and crossing. We have already discussed. So there is a lemnisci system like lateral, spinal, and a medial lemnisci. And this is the discussion of the superior cerebral peduncles. All of things I have discussed. So moving on, summary portion in this chart, and already I have discussed this. We can trochlear nerve posterior to this is coming out from the posterior and going to the anterior through the lateral side of this midbrain. Moving on this, when we look at the level of inferior colliculi, there is a cerebral aqueduct. When we look for the cavity and we look for the nucleus, there is the inferior colliculus nucleus, sustenia nigra trochlear nucleus, and the mesencephalic nucleus of the cranial nerve 5 trigeminal nerve. When we look for the motor tract, there is the corticospinal tract, corticonuclear tract, and temporopontine tract, frontopontine tract, medial longitudinal fasciculus. When we look for the sensory tract at the level of inferior colliculi, there is a lateral trigeminal, spinal, and medial lemnisci. Discussion of the superior cerebral peduncles. We can look. We have already looked in the image. So moving on the superior colliculus. In the superior colliculus, there is a cerebral aqueduct. We have seen, but we look for nucleus. There is superior colliculus, sustenia nigra, oculomotor nucleus, Edinger Westphal nucleus, and the red nucleus of mesencephalic nucleus of the cranial of the trigeminal cranial or trigeminal of 5 or trigeminal. When we look for the motor, there is a corticospinal tract, corticonuclear tract, and temporopontine tract. There is a frontopontine and medial longitudinal and fasciculus discussion and rubral spinal tract. And when you look for the sensory tract, these are the motor tract. When you look for the sensory tract, there is trigeminal, spinal, and the middle hemisphere tract at the level of superior colliculi. We can look in this section. In this section, when we cut at the level of superior colliculi, when the cut is the inferior colliculi. In the inferior colliculi, there is a trochlear nerve. When at the superior colliculi, there is a oculomotor nerve. So oculomotor nerve originate anteriorly at the level of superior colliculi at the above of the trochlea. I think this much we have to clear in the revision.